Hi, I'm Jacqueline.
And I'm Courtney, and this is Caffeinated Crimes.
I'm very proud of myself for remembering our intro this week.
I almost started laughing. I had to be like, compartmentalize, because I was like, is she going to do it again? Like the anticipation of, are you going to do it again?
I did have to say it over in my head before, because I've never done that before. We just hit record and then it just comes out of my mouth, but that didn't work for me last week. So this time I had to I'm like, okay, wait, which is okay. And so now I'm going to think about it too much. So now it's
It's like when you type a word too many times and then you're like, is that actually how you spell? And it's like a simple word. It's like orange, and you're like, that looks wrong. That's not how you spell that.
No, I don't think this is right. This is
I think it's actually a J, not a G. That feels more right.
Yeah, I've definitely been there before. Also super exciting news today. So I don't think I shared this on the podcast, but my mother-in-law got me a hummingbird feeder for my birthday a few weeks ago. So I was really excited about that because I love all of my outdoor creatures. We feed all of the animals that will come to us because we love, watching them and everything. And apparently it can take weeks or months for hummingbirds to find a new feeder. So I've been very patiently waiting for a hummingbird to come to my feeder, and he finally did today.
Ooh, that's exciting.
It was so exciting. I might have teared up a little bit. It was just
I'm not shocked at all.
So I was sitting outside and I was reading my book, and I just put my daughter down for a nap, and I was sitting outside reading my book, and it started to rain. So I was oh, let me pick up my stuff. So I'm gathering all my stuff to go inside, and then he just floats out. It's super dark outside because it was about to storm, and then he just floats down, and I was oh my God, he's here.
He's here. He's come.
So then I had to stay outside in the rain to watch this hummingbird until he flew away.
Well, I can kind of relate on a story because on the road that is perpendicular to us, there's a way that Kevin and I, when I run, I will run past it. And there's a way that Kevin and I have started walking because there's a lot of stray cats on this road. And so every time we count them to see how many, the most we've ever counted is 7.
Wow,
but yesterday,
that is a lot of cats. Oh,
yesterday we counted 9, and we knew that one of them was missing. There's 10 motherfucking cats.
Oh my gosh.
On this, and it's in this 6-house span, 3 on one side, 3 on the other. So most of them go onto this one porch. So most of them were there, and then there's a few other porches, but 9 fucking cats did we count, and one of them did let us pet it. So I got really excited.
That is exciting.
The only other one who lets us pet him wasn't there, because he's the one we saw one time at the park, and we were petting him, but his face kind of looks like a cougar, legit.
Oh my gosh.
We were petting this cat at the park, and then Kevin and I looked at each other and we're like, is this a baby cougar?
You're wait a minute.
Both of us for a second were like, is this a domestic animal, or did we just fuck up? But it's a cat. It's a cat. Apparently, whoever used to live on that road, we talked to someone one day, it just abandoned him, which is so sad. But that's why he's so friendly.
So sad. Well, that sounds like someone is feeding them at least. So
the one house is definitely feeding them because they're there every time. And
Courtney, I don't know if I told you this story. Okay, so do you remember when I first moved in and there was a dog that was wandering around my neighborhood, and she was super skinny, and it was super, it was the day that it was really cold outside. So I was this must be a stray dog.
Third dog. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. But I put out food for the dog, of course. And then the dog, I never saw the dog again. Well, then a few weeks ago, I saw the dog again. And I know, how did I not tell you this? So of course I take food out for this dog. And then the dog's wandering away. And so then I'm well, maybe I need to go see if she has something on her that does she belong to someone? Is she getting loose? What's happening? And so I'm chasing down this dog, and then this guy starts walking down the street, and I was are you looking for a dog? And he's yeah. And I was oh, me too. I found your dog.
This guy was oh my God, you dog snatcher.
I have a bowl of food in my front yard for his dog because I thought it was a stray dog.
That's so funny.
But she's really old, so that's why she looks so skinny, because she's just old. It's not she's not fed, and she's blind and deaf, but somehow can get out all the time. And so
that's crazy.
And then she was just like laying in the neighbor's yard. And so like we're both trying to like, because she just like plopped down and was like, all right, I'm just gonna relax here. And so, but
Yeah.
I was like, I look insane right now with my daughter on my hip and like clearly have a bowl of food in my front yard that I'm trying to feed your dog who's been out for like 5 minutes probably.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, at least it's like he's like, at least people are like taking care of him, you know,
yeah.
if
And he
they
told
get
me
out.
her name and where he lives. So that way, when she gets out the next time, I know where she belongs so I can take her home.
Nice. That's nice. Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of how one of the stray cats at my parents' house came to be, is
Yeah.
there was a house that these young girls lived in and they had the cat, but they would never feed the cat. Like they didn't like their parent would not buy the cat food.
Oh my
So the cat would
gosh.
constantly get out and we would feed it. We named him Copper. And we kind of had a little bit of a battle with these. I was being really bitchy to young girls, but I didn't even really fucking care because they were annoying me. Like
Yeah.
anytime I would come home, they would be like, "Where's my cat?" And I'd be like, "I don't know."
Like, well, your cat would starve if it wasn't for me.
Yeah,
So,
literally, that's kind of what it was like. And they eventually like moved out and just left the cat, but it just ended up being a stray, and it was basically our cat after that.
oh my gosh, that's insane. Like,
Oh,
don't
Copper.
get animals that you cannot take care of. Like, I just cannot
Yeah.
wrap my brain around this. Like,
And don't
why?
leave them if you like
No.
move. That's so sad. That breaks my heart.
Yeah.
Like just seeing my cat when I leave for like a day. I don't know.
Yeah.
I have like pet cams now, and I almost don't even want to put them up anymore when I leave because I just see how sad my cat
Oh,
is that I'm not there. And I'll
that's
just
so
get her on
sad.
the bed and she'll be like, "Meow."
Oh,
And I'm just like, I can't watch this.
that is really pitiful.
It's so pitiful.
Oh boy. Okay. Well, I don't know. It's in typical Jacqueline and Courtney fashion. We just went on some long rant after
Yeah.
already talking for 45 minutes before hitting record.
And we
But
have
we,
updates.
yes, exactly. So
So
we need to get into these because we do have two pretty major updates in the true crime world this week.
yeah. So our first update is Jordan Vandersloot, who is the longtime suspect in the Natalie Holloway case and one of the last people to see her alive. If you listen to our 2-part episode on Natalie Holloway, you will know all about him.
Mm-hmm.
He has officially been extradited to the US to stand trial for charges of extortion and wire fraud. Also, if you remember that from episode, he was in a jail in Peru for the murder of another woman. And so basically, he's like, the US is charging him for attempting to extort Natalie's family and promises to tell them like where her body was. So he
Mm-hmm.
contacted the family, said, I'll tell you where she is if you send me money. They sent the money. He did not tell them. And her
Yeah.
remains still have not been found. So hopefully this could also open the door of, if he did have something to do with her disappearance, getting some
Yeah,
answers.
absolutely. And also this week, Lori Vallow Daybell was found guilty of murdering her children and conspiring to kill her husband's first wife. We did briefly cover her on one of our Patreon like end of year
Yeah.
recaps that we did. I'm sure we'll cover that case at some point. Like there's a lot to it. Like it's pretty wild. But she was found guilty on 2 counts of first-degree murder and conspiracy for both JJ and Tylee, who were her 2 children, and a count of conspiracy against Tammy, who is Chad Daybell's first wife. So she is facing life in prison, and to the surprise of no one, she showed no remorse when the verdict was read, because clearly there is something very, very wrong with this woman. So,
and she likely will have life in prison too, because it's 5 total counts.
mm-hmm.
Also, like 2 counts first degree murder, 2 counts because 3 counts conspiracy technically.
Yeah.
So if she doesn't get life in prison, I don't know what's wrong.
Yeah.
Like we
Hopefully
do know that she won't get the
receives...
death penalty, but she should just be somewhere. Even if they want to put her in a psychiatric ward, fine. Just don't let her out.
Does not need to be in society with the rest of us, for sure.
All right. Well, we will go ahead and get into this case. And this case was a recommendation from one of our listeners, Lucy, who lives in Scotland. So thank you so much, Lucy.
Yes, thank you, Lucy.
And our sources for today are a BBC.com article, a few articles from The Guardian, an article from Examiner Live, an article from National World, and a documentary, Missing or Murdered: The Disappearance of Claudia Lawrence. So in March 2009, Claudia Lawrence didn't show up for her job, which was very unlike her. She also failed to meet up with her friend later that day. Claudia seemingly disappeared into thin air. So what happened to her? As the documentary would say, is she missing or murdered? Because they ask that a lot.
Seems like they got a theme going on there.
Big theme. So Claudia Elizabeth Lawrence was born in Moulton, North Yorkshire on February 27th, 1974, and she was raised in the Houghton area of North Yorkshire by Peter and Joan Lawrence. So I did listen to all the pronunciations on this documentary, but I'm sorry if my Southern comes out. My Southern might come out.
Yes, we have looked up the correct pronunciations, but sometimes what is in our head and what comes out of our mouth are two very different things. Yep. So we're doing our best.
So Peter was a partner at a solicitor's firm, and she also had an older sister, Allie. And Peter and Joan did end up getting divorced in 1996. Claudia loved horses and ponies, and she had a pony from a very young age, and she did have riding lessons every Saturday. Claudia was pretty shy, and her sister Allie was more academic, and Claudia was more adventurous, which her father kind of joked and was like, landed us like at the hospitals a lot more because she was just always out and about doing something.
Yep.
And her friends described her as funny and lovely. And after school, Claudia went to catering college, and she worked as a chef at the Goodricke College at the Roger Kirk Center of the University of York. So,
that is a mouthful.
Big old mouthful. Yeah. And she typically worked the morning shift, like usually started around like 6 a.m. So on March 18, 2009, Claudia had finished up a normal shift at around 2:30 p.m. and she started walking home. It was about 2.3 miles away, and she had been doing this since her car was like at the shop. So she didn't typically walk, but her car had been like needing some repairs, and so she decided to just walk to and from work. And she was seen leaving on CCTV footage. And she's seen again around 2:50 p.m. on CCTV footage at the Melrose Gate post office, and she's seen dropping off a letter. And she's also seen later closer to her cottage by a nanny who knew her from the Nag's Head pub, which she frequented. So she went, so she saw her walk past at about 3:10 p.m. The nanny said she waved, and Claudia seemed like her normal, enthusiastic self. So in a few different articles, especially The Guardian, they did report on this day that like a friend gave her a ride home. So a lot of those are like a friend saw her at around 2:30 and like, or 2:50 and like gave her a ride home. But the documentary like kind of seems to say different and like mention the CCTV footage, has an interview with her father. So I feel like that might be a little bit more accurate since we do have more people like close to the case, but every article I read said she got a ride home that day. So
I wonder if that's like one of those instances of in the very beginning, like there was one like, you know, newspaper that printed something incorrectly. And then since then, like so many people have just ran with it, you know?
Yeah.
Especially like you said, like having an interview with her father and having like 3 distinctive like CCTV footage and time. I couldn't think of the word I was trying to put there, but like distinctive times and locations and not just, oh, she was seen on, you know, like a very broad. Yeah, that I would agree with that. Like
it's very weird. And I want to believe the documentary over these articles, but I wanted to put both out there just in case people were like, well, I read that this happened. Like we're having differing reports. So
absolutely
kind of the case here. So at 7:15 p.m., a figure is captured turning near Claudia's house on CCTV footage. And then a minute later, he's back and he has like a bag over his shoulder. So he's kind of like perpendicular to another road. And someone's walking down this road. And as he's walking up to that road, like he sees someone pass and he like stops, almost like he doesn't want to be seen by this person or doesn't want to bump into someone. Like he wasn't close enough that was like, I have to stop before I keep walking. It was like, kind of far back and just stops. So they were like, kind of weird. And then once the person passes, like he just keeps going and he does turn on the road toward Claudia's house. However, Claudia does seem to be having a normal evening while this happens. At 7:27 p.m., she speaks to Peter, and he does offer to lend her his car, but she says, like, she'll just walk. She's like, it's fine. I don't, you know. And he said overall, she just seemed happy. And then at 8:04 p.m., she did speak to her mother, Joan. And Joan also said she seemed normal. And she just mentioned, like, she was going to go to bed probably by 9 p.m. She has early mornings with the morning shift. So talking to her, and she's like, yeah, I'm probably going to go to bed soon, you know. And the last text she received was from a male friend in Cyprus who worked at a bar at 9:12 p.m. So Cyprus is like a kind of place that she'd visited multiple times, at least 5 times before she disappeared. So this was somewhere she went a lot, knew a lot of people there. It's an island in the Mediterranean Sea. But it does look like Claudia never opened that message. So she did receive it, but she never opened it. And again, it's 2009. So she could have easily gone to bed and even gotten up the next morning and not checked her phone, because 2009, I don't think we were doing it as heavily as we do now.
Or, you could be like my husband, and I will text him, like, TikTok videos or whatever from bed, like after I go to bed. And then the next day at like 6 p.m., he'll like respond. And I'm like, sir, what have you been doing all day? Like, he just like doesn't check it.
Yeah. Obviously, she never opened the message, but I also will open messages and then like start a response or respond in my head and never send it.
Yeah, same.
But yeah, and like she's also at this time 35. So she also is not like a part of a generation who grew up with cell phones.
Yeah,
so I feel
absolutely.
like even in 2009, like it just wouldn't be something she would check all that frequently.
Yeah, like, I mean, kind of more like an email at that point versus like a phone call, like something that it's like, oh, like I would like respond to this immediately. It's like, oh no, like it wouldn't be unusual to like wait a bit to respond or like not check your messages first thing. Yeah.
So Claudia did not show up for her shift on March 19th. Her manager attempted to call her but did not receive an answer. And at 12:08, Claudia's phone was turned off. So that evening, she was scheduled to meet up with her friend Susie Cooper at the Nag's Head near Claudia's house. Susie usually got to the pub first. So she was usually there waiting on Claudia. She was like, it was normal, I'd wait on her. And their mutual friend, Jen King, was also working behind the bar. But at 10 p.m., there was still no sign of her, which she was like, this is very odd. Like, why is she so late and hasn't said anything? So she does continue to try and like reach out to Claudia, but she doesn't get a response. And she was like, it was very unlike Claudia to not show up and not call. Then the next morning on March 20th, Susie called her phone and it went to voicemail again. So now Susie is like very worried. So she did call the landlord of the pub and asked him to go knock on Claudia's door, but there was no answer. And everyone in with this pub is like very close knit. Like we'll talk about it some more later. So they all kind of knew each other. So she was like, you're close, go check on her. And Jen was actually calling local hospitals just to see like something like that happen. So then Susie did finally reach out to Peter, who did have a spare key to her apartment. So he went to her house and she wasn't there. He said her slippers were like by the door, like they usually would be when she was putting her boots on to leave for work. And everything just looked perfectly in order. Like there was nothing weird, nothing out of place, no sign of a struggle. In the kitchen was like her unwashed breakfast dishes. And so now he's just extremely worried because it's like full day, no one's heard from her and she's not at her apartment. So she was always in touch with her friends, and it wasn't like her to just go radio silent like this. So he did report her missing, and police were actually there within minutes and appeared to be taking it very seriously.
Which is very different from how adult missing person cases are here in the US, because usually it's like, oh, it hasn't been 48 hours. Well, come back later. I don't care.
Yeah. So police looked through her apartment and found the only things missing from her apartment were like her phone and her chef's white is what they call it, like her uniform. They did find a bag that had her driver's license and credit card in it, which I don't know if that was maybe something she typically just left, especially if you're walking. Maybe she didn't want to have it on her. Not really sure.
Yeah.
So this suggested that she'd possibly left in the early morning hours of March 19th for work, since her phone and her uniform is missing, and both of those items have never been recovered. So on March 21st, the North Yorkshire Police launched a missing person appeal. And police think the most likely explanation is that she was abducted by someone while walking to work. And they also probably thought it was a man and maybe someone she knew. So Jen's like, if a stranger stopped and offered her a ride, like she would not accept it. Like there's no way she would. She would only accept it from someone she knew.
I mean, like she even declined to like borrow her father's car, you know? So it's like, yeah.
But yeah, and especially I'll get into it, but she had to leave very early. So it's like, you're not going to just like even me, I'd be like, I'm not getting in. I'll keep walking. I'm not getting into a stranger's car.
Yeah.
So in order for her to get to work at 6 a.m. and walk the 2.3 miles, she would need to leave like around 5 a.m. And there was no CCTV footage of her walking to work. Other people are seen on the CCTV footage, so it is like working, but she was never seen on it. At 5:42 a.m., a car is seen on Hewitt's Road near Claudia's place, and it kind of brakes suddenly. So like while it's kind of leaving the frame, it just like puts its brakes on. So they're like, why is this car suddenly braking in the middle of the road? Did it stop to pick up Claudia? Like, is this a clue? But the car was never traced, and they've never found out whose car it was, anything like that. And sometimes a coworker, David Oxer, would pick her up, but they hadn't made arrangements for that day. Like he talks about it like, sometimes I would if she would ask me, but she didn't ask me that day, so I didn't like go that way towards her apartment. At about 5:35 a.m. at Melrose Gate Bridge, which is about half a mile from Claudia's home, a cyclist saw a man and a woman standing talking. The man was thin and similar height to the woman, and he wore a dark hoodie and combat pants, and he was also smoking a cigarette with his left hand. Also on Melrose Gate, a woman jogging had reported being accosted by a man in a white van either Wednesday or Thursday of that week. So this gained a little bit of significance because on a CCTV sighting captured by a bus just across the road from Claudia's house at 9 p.m. the night before Claudia went missing, there was a parked white Astra van. So they're like, kind of the same area. A woman is like being accosted by a man in a white van. There's a white van across from Claudia's apartment or house. And it was there for about 30 minutes, but no one has come forward claiming the van or saying why it was there. So don't really know, basically. And that's kind of the hard part of this case is like we do have CCTV footage of certain things that could be helpful, but no one's ever come forward. So
it's like you have so many like almost clues, but then it's like we just can't get that like deeper level of information that you need.
And it's so many like, are we grasping at straws or is it actually something? Because it's like, how many white vans are there in the UK? I'm sure a lot. Is it the same one? We don't know, but we're literally trying anything right now.
Yeah. But it's just like we saw like just last week with Jody Huisentruit that they would describe like the vehicle and no one came forward even to say like, oh, it was me, but here's what I was doing there to like, like rule them out. You know what I mean? So it's one of those, was this someone who had something to do with it because no one is willing to come forward and say this was their vehicle and they didn't have something to do with it, you know?
And that's got a lot of media coverage. So I feel like if it was me in the van or me in the car braking, I would be like, oh, hey, that was me. I braked because a deer ran in front. But like maybe you just think that they're going to pin you on something that you didn't do because...
Which I get too.
The police is fucked up. So.
Yeah, I understand that completely too.
At 6:10 a.m. on University Road, a man and a woman were seen standing next to a car with the passenger door open, and they appeared to be arguing. Police made appeals for this as well, but with no results. And this to me is suspicious because I'm like, if you're that couple fighting, like, and they think this is a lead in this case, like, why wouldn't you be like, that was me and my husband, we fought about da-da-da. So I'm like, could this one have been Claudia? Because why has no couple come forward being like, that wasn't Claudia, that was us?
Yeah. Which, like you said, it could just be people not wanting to get involved and being afraid that they're going to be railroaded, or, you know, maybe they aren't a married couple. Maybe they were having an affair. And so they're like, well, we don't want to come forward and reveal ourselves. And then our spouses find out about it, you know.
That's true as well. But it's just like, it's such a strong lead for the police. So I
Mm-hmm.
feel like I would just be like, please don't tell anyone, but just tell the public that we know
Yeah.
who this couple was and it's not significant or
Yeah.
something. And as we know, Claudia did not show up to work that day. So at 6:10, she was supposed to be work at 6. And at 7:05 a.m., police believe they see Richard Cartwright, who's a local property landlord near Claudia's home. From the same camera, they saw the suspicious man. So now they're like, could it be him? But I don't know if this is the same man Susie called or not, but it's someone they wanted to talk to, basically. But on April 9th, Richard dies of natural causes. So police could never fully remove him from their list of suspects because they never really got to talk to him.
Yeah.
At around 10 a.m., the day she went missing, the manager tried to call Claudia again with no answer. And cell phone data places the phone within an area like northwest of York, but that tower encompassed an area of about 9 miles that also included Claudia's home. So her phone was not found there, but it's in this general area. At around 1 p.m. that day, a backpack similar to Claudia's is spotted by someone walking past the university, and it is along a path she would have taken, but by the time police got there, it was gone and has not been recovered. So, again, these like almost leads everywhere. So police also tried to interview friends, family, and coworkers. And one of the coworkers they interviewed was David Oxer. And he said at work, she kind of kept to herself. She didn't really get involved in like other people's gossip. She would engage in like the kitchen banter that they had, but like wasn't really like had any issues with anyone. He said he knew that she liked to like enjoy herself after work and that she'd usually go to the Nag's Head pub a lot. And she went there a lot with Susie and Jen. So Susie and Jen had actually met Claudia when she moved to York in her 30s, and they all met at the Nag's Head pub. Susie and Claudia had hit it off like right away. They were both single and they just really bonded. Susie said they used to joke they were spinster sisters since they're both like single in their 30s. And everyone at this pub was just really close. And police wondered if someone was like holding back information from them. So police just start like focusing in on this pub and they're like, someone from this pub did it, basically with no real evidence.
Yeah, because you got to try to go off something. So they're like, well, this will do it.
Yeah. And they tried to do like a really extensive search in the area for her as well. So Peter and Joan said that her disappearance was completely out of character for her, and Crime Stoppers offered a reward of £10,000 for anyone providing information. Appeals were made for any information and for the driver, like of the car that they saw on CCTV footage to come forward, just so like they just want to find any information or find if they're going down the wrong path. And then 5 weeks after Claudia's disappearance, on April 24th, with no sign of her, police formally classified the case as suspected murder. And it did break my heart in the documentary because her father was just like, they didn't tell us that until this press conference, and I didn't think she was dead. And it hurt for them to say, like, we're assuming she's dead now.
And to like hear that so publicly, like that had to be so hard.
A police dog was brought to Nag's Head to sniff for any sign of remains. They did find a bedsheet with a blood stain that was found and taken for analysis. It kind of seems like it's a hotel and pub. So a lot of people stay there. So I don't really know. Could be anyone's blood. And DNA tests on the blood were like inconclusive. So they didn't get any information from that. So Claudia's phone records were also examined, and it seems she'd been spending a lot of time in Acomb in the weeks leading up to her disappearance. And there was even a time they tried to reach out to taxi drivers to see if anyone had taken her to Acomb in the weeks leading up to her disappearance. So again, they're just like, anyone who've maybe seen her, even in the weeks leading up, let's see what we can find.
Yeah, I'm just trying to pull from like all directions to get any possible information. So then on June 2nd, 2009, the case was covered on an episode of BBC's Crime Watch, where Detective Ray Galloway, who was leading the investigation, appeared and said that after 11 weeks, they were still without any strong leads in her suspected murder. So he was at this point like pushed to discuss some of Claudia's relationships. And he said, quote, "As the investigation has developed, it has become apparent that some of Claudia's relationships had an element of complexity and mystery to them. I'm certain that some of the relationships were not known to her family or friends." So this statement just like really changed the public's opinion of this case. And Galloway later tried to say like he didn't intend for this statement to come across like in a negative fashion, but like the public are now viewing Claudia like in this more negative light. Like her character was just like ripped to pieces, and basically people saying like she deserved like what happened to her. And the negative media around Claudia got worse when a woman came forward claiming that Claudia had an affair with her husband and had ended her marriage. So Peter questioned the statement because he's like, I don't know how my daughter would have had time to like form these suspicious relationships that no one like in her family or any of her friends know about. And he was quoted saying, "We really wonder whether, certainly recently, she had time to form any relationships other than those about which we know. She saw her best friend Susie and myself very regularly, and she worked in quite a strenuous job. And so we just wonder how that could be possible." And Susie also disputes the claims. Like they're like, she is like working all the time. She's getting up super early. Like she typically goes to bed early because she has to be up so early. She spends a lot of time like with her family and friends. So like, when is she forming these other relationships? You know, it's not like, oh, like she's alone all the time. We never see her and you have no idea what's going on in her life. Like, no, we see her all the time and this doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and they were like, she was single. She was in her 30s. Like she'd go on dates with men and stuff, but it was never anything like nefarious or whatever. Like they're making like she's this like adulteress coming in and just ruining everyone. Like,
yeah. So at this point, police are trying to expand their search to Cyprus. Like Courtney mentioned, Claudia would visit there often. So they're trying to interview people on this island who knew Claudia, and she did know quite a few people and had even been offered several jobs while she was there. And Ray Galloway said that interviewees had like been reluctant and less than candid in their interviews. So they're just really not wanting to share a lot of information. And police did speak to a friend of Claudia's who split his time driving a van between Coral Bay and Cyprus in the UK. And he was described as like a big character. He worked at one of the local bars. And at the time, one theory was that she had left the UK like in a van and been smuggled into Cyprus, which could explain how she was able to get abroad without her passport. However, it's not really that easy. Like you're having to go through like custom checkpoints and stuff. Like it's not like you could just easily kind of slip through. And she had also previously like asked the guy if he could find her work with horses or at the stables. And he was questioned and his alibi was confirmed by police. So over a few months, there were over 1,000 witness statements taken, 240 properties searched, and still no leads. And eventually the investigative team went from 100 people to 7, which I feel like is so sad. Like when you reach that point that you're like, oh, okay, like they're realizing that they're likely not going to find anything and they have to like move manpower around. And Peter said like he understood the need for police to draw back on the amount of detectives because the case was really starting to stall. So a year after she disappeared, her coworker David Oxer like remembered something that he hadn't before. So he said that like Tuesday, March 17th, that she like looked kind of rough. And so, he spoke to her and he was like, hey, like looking a bit rough this morning. And she was like, yeah. And he asked her if she didn't get enough sleep. She was like, no, not a lot. And she told him that she had been out that evening, so Monday the 16th, with a male friend and that things progressed. So police believe that she did have a casual boyfriend at the time she disappeared, but not this man that Claudia mentioned to David. So this is like someone else that police are trying to get to come forward, but this person has never come forward either.
Which like there's a lot of details they hold back. And I'm like, why do you think she had a casual boyfriend, and why also do you think it wasn't the guy he's talking about?
Yeah,
like,
I thought that was interesting too. So in March of 2010, based on a new lead, police searched various areas of York, including Heslington and land near the university, including a children's play area, and nothing of suspicion was found. Then in 2013, North Yorktown Police set up a new Major Crime Unit, or MCU, which was established to look into kidnappings, rapes, and stalled cases such as Claudia's.
Which, like, why are you naming yourself the MCU?
Yeah.
That's not a great name.
Yeah, it's not.
Well, I meant because of Marvel. The
Oh.
Marvel Cinematic Universe is called the MCU.
Oh. Yeah, that's true.
So like all the people who like watch Marvel movies are going to be like, the MCU, you mean the Marvel Cinematic Universe? Like, what do you mean?
They're like, what are you talking about? That doesn't make sense.
No, the Major Crime Unit, you know?
Obviously, like this. So, using advanced techniques, the MCU found additional fingerprints and a man's DNA on a cigarette butt in Claudia's car that was in the shop. So they did wonder, like, if this could be connected to the report, seeing like a man and a woman talking that morning because the man was smoking a cigarette. Or like maybe like she knew this person. You know, he had been in her car before because obviously her car was in the shop at the time she disappeared. It's not like it was found like later. So like, was this someone she knew that she was like arguing with that morning? But all efforts to find this man have failed.
I also wonder though, and Lucy especially, tell me if this is just a stereotype of the UK, but like, doesn't everyone smoke over there? Like,
Right.
isn't that the thing? Is like everyone in Europe smokes? Like, I thought that
Yeah.
was always like the thing people say is it's like everyone just does it. And so I'm like,
Is this like a
is
big
it
clue?
that,
Yeah.
is that like a big clue? Because like, even in the US, I'm like, I mean, you tell me you see a man smoking a cigarette and then find a cigarette in a car. I'm like, I don't really think that's that damning of evidence. A lot of
Yeah,
people
like
smoke.
I think it's common enough that it's not something that we just be like, oh, well, this is it. This is the person. Like,
But you know, we're grasping at straws anywhere.
yeah, true. So records from her Samsung D900 mobile phone did show cell site activity that she was in the Acomb area of York in the weeks leading up to her disappearance. And it also showed that her phone was deliberately shut off at about 12:10 on March 19th, 2009. So their data does like show when a phone is like intentionally turned off using the button, like not like it died. So of course the question is, who turned off her phone? Like, was it Claudia? Was it someone else who wanted to make sure that no one could get a hold of her? A number of arrests were then carried out in relation to the investigation, including 6 men on suspicion of murder, but none of them were charged. And in March of 2016, investigators promised that Claudia's case will not be closed until she is found and those responsible are brought to justice. So as far as what happened to Claudia, there are a lot of rumors. Some people think she left of her own accord and moved to Cyprus. Like she, like we said, loved the area. She had some job opportunities there. Other people think maybe she had like a new lover or a new job. She just wanted to leave. But from all accounts, like it doesn't look like she had any bad relationships with anyone in her life that she would like run away and not tell them she was okay. You know, it's not like she's in this abusive relationship and she's just going to take off and hide forever. She had pretty good relationships with her family and friends. So if she just wanted a fresh start, why would she not at least tell them where she was going? Like that's pretty extreme to just leave and never talk to anyone ever again, especially if you had a good relationship with the people in your life.
And Jen and Susie both talked about like trips to Cyprus where it was like she was getting job interviews from everyone there. Like not job interviews, but like job opportunities. Like come here and work, come here and work. So it's like they were like, we would not be surprised if she moved to Cyprus. Like if she told us I'm moving to Cyprus, like no one would be shocked.
Yeah. So in July of 2012, there was a smuggling theory arising where a detective said that he saw Claudia in Amsterdam. So they think like maybe she was kidnapped into the sex trade in Amsterdam. And Claudia was 35 years old when she went missing. So obviously not like old, but typically it's like young girls and women who are selected like for trafficking. So like she would be a little outside of the typical age range for that. So her mother, Joan, also said that she had heard about a white slave trade going on, and she heard from a man in York who had gone to live in Hartlepool, who was convinced that he had seen Claudia down by the marina. So he said there were boats daily going to Amsterdam. Maybe she could have been on one of them. And so the Dutch police do check out this story, but they don't find any trace of Claudia. Another theory is that Claudia was a victim of a serial killer, Christopher Hollywell. So Christopher was a Swindon taxi driver who went to jail in 2012 for 2 murders, and a witness did report that they saw Claudia near her home talking to someone who matched Christopher's description. So Joan said that she remembered the man and how Claudia said she was spooked and she would never forget his eyes. And then she did think it was him when she saw his photo in papers. And the officer working Christopher's case thought there could be a connection. So Christopher was seen in Yorkshire, but not close to York, where Claudia lived. And it is interesting because they were looking for taxi drivers who may have taken her to Acomb, and like, or if she even took one that morning. But there's been no evidence to definitively link Christopher to Claudia.
And stay tuned in a few weeks to hear more about
Yes.
him, because he inspired a case of his own.
Yes, a little teaser there. So in June 2019, 10 years after Claudia's disappearance, the government introduced the Guardianship Missing Persons Act 2017, informally known as Claudia's Law. So the law would allow for a guardian to be appointed to manage the affairs of a person who has been missing for 90 days or more. And this guardian would have the power to, for example, like stop direct debit for utilities, just be able to do things for someone who has been missing for a significant period of time that if like you don't have like a death certificate, it's really hard to do those things. And the law was introduced after campaigning by Peter Lawrence with the support of members of parliament.
Which again, he made me cry because he was like, it felt so good for them to get up there and be like, this will forever be known as Claudia's Law. Like her name will always be like associated with this and like the work he put in.
Yeah. And on March 19th, 2020, the North Yorkshire Police posted a tweet with Claudia's picture saying it was 11 years ago today that Claudia Lawrence was last seen alive. Our thoughts remain with Claudia's loved ones on this poignant day. North Yorkshire Police will never give up on Claudia until it's known who is responsible for her disappearance and suspected murder. And in March of 2021, on the 12th anniversary of her disappearance, a fresh appeal was issued for information. So Martin Dales, who is a friend of Peter's, has called on anyone with information to come forward. Police said that information could help break the case open. It's basically been 12 years with no information. So like anything would help, And a major announcement was made on August 24th, 2021, as police began searching woodland and a fishing lake at Sand Hutton Gravel Pits in York. And the detective superintendent made a statement saying it was in relation to Claudia's disappearance, but declined to answer any questions. So teams of police experts, search dogs, divers, and forensic archaeologists spent 2 weeks scouring the lake and nearby woods, but unfortunately no clues came from this search. So a lot of her family and friends do believe now that it is possible Claudia is dead because it has been so many years. Peter was holding out hope that maybe she was possibly still alive, had just been captured. Like he doesn't want to believe that she's dead, obviously. Joan does think that she is still just missing. She said that she doesn't feel like a cutoff, and as a mom, she thinks that she would know if Claudia was dead. And unfortunately, Peter Lawrence died on February 11th, 2021 at the age of 74 following a short illness, and died before ever knowing what happened to his daughter. So what happened to Claudia? Did she decide to run away but leave her passport and not touch her bank account? Was she kidnapped and held captive? Was she kidnapped and murdered? Was it by someone she knew, or was it by a stranger? Unfortunately, after all these years, we still just have no idea.
Yeah, and they will not name the 6 men who've been arrested and let go. I think it's because in the UK, it's like a confidentiality thing. Like basically the documentary was like, we will not name them because they were not charged formally with anything, basically, or it didn't like go on. And I think they're pretty strict about that. So I think it would be interesting to like know who was arrested, because I'm like, was it someone she knows? Like,
yeah,
I thought it was interesting. I don't want to point fingers and I don't want to get sued, but like her coworker, like David, like who sometimes picked her up and like was talking about all this. I'm like, could he have like been in the area, or could this have just been someone like she was kind of hooking up with and like it went south? Like,
and like a year later, he suddenly remembers this brief conversation they had.
Yeah.
Like a year later, that suddenly pops into your head, but it didn't immediately after she went missing. Like that is unusual.
Yeah. So I just thought that all was like kind of weird and like, I don't know. It's like literally like she disappeared into thin air.
Yeah.
It's like, did she disappear like that night? Like after she spoke with her mother and, after that? Did something happen to her then? Was she on her way to work? Was she walking on her way? Like, was these reported sightings actually her and her arguing with someone? Like, did, someone she know offer her a ride? Or could it have been someone like a taxi driver who was like, hey, like, I'll give you a ride, whatever. Like, I don't know. It's like a
bizarre.
mystery, and it's like so frustrating. And like her phone being shut off at like 12:10 or whatever, like 12, when like she'd been missed, like no one had heard from her like since 6 a.m. People were calling her. Nothing. Like,
I mean, it sounds like because she had her work clothes with her. Like her unwashed breakfast dishes were in the sink. So it's like, does she get up, like eat, leave for work? But also she didn't have like her wallet and her license and stuff. So like you said, like maybe like walking, she wouldn't have that. But I feel like you usually like have your ID on you, even if you're not like driving, right? Like just to like have your identification. But I mean, I guess if she thought she wasn't going to need it for some reason,
Yeah. And that's the thing too, is like, I don't really know as well as like in the UK and like how much does your ID really matter there? I mean, how much do you actually like, do you even ever really need it if you're not driving? Like, I don't know culturally, the differences in carrying your driver's license identification like that. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know the differences between the US and there, like, but like, I don't believe she went to Cyprus because people would have seen her by now. People knew her there.
For sure.
She doesn't have her passport. So I'm like, how would she have gotten abroad? And like some of her friends were saying in the documentary, and they were like, I don't know. I don't want her to be dead. But if she's alive, like, what is she experiencing? Like, I don't want that either. So it's just like so conflicting, and to just not know. And no sign of her. Nothing.
Yeah, that is, I mean, it's very similar to, like, so the case we just covered, Jody Huisentruit, and like, where it's, you just have nothing to go off of and you have no idea. And these people just, like you said, just vanish into thin air.
Yeah. Well, hopefully you won't do hopefully the next case isn't a missing person case.
It is not, but the next one is really sad. So I'm really sorry, guys. But
it's really sad. And then we're doing a serial killer, so it's never going to get happier from here. I'll tell you that right now. This is a true crime podcast.
Yeah, that's what you're here for, right? Apparently. Also, quick side note before we get into our perks of the week, it just made me think of this with the taxi driver. So on last week's episode, I mentioned that I was like leaving very early the next morning, for the airport, and that my Lyft driver had been confirmed, as a female name. So I was like feeling some relief that, Okay, well, she took a wrong turn on the way to the airport. And so I'm like in the backseat, like panicking. I'm like, she's going to deliver me to be murdered. That's what's about to happen right now. And she like apologized. She's like, oh no, I'm so sorry. Because like we were like chatting a little bit, and she was like, I like got distracted and I like missed the turn. And she was like, it's okay. She's going to put me like right back up here and I'll be right there. And then she was like stressed out at every red light. Like she was like, come on. Like, I guess she was like worried that like she was going to make me late or something. So like she seemed to be like stressed about missing the turn, but I'm like, what if this is all an act and like she's gonna like deliver me to, so I was a little panicky until we got back on the interstate. But anyway,
no, I get that. I used to take lifts a lot alone, like on Thursday nights, and there was like one guy who like kept being like, oh, I think I can get closer. And at one point I was like, you have to take this exit right now, or there is not another one for 10 miles.
Yeah.
I was like, take this exit. Like, I literally was like, I'm not even going to be nice. Like, take this exit.
Yeah.
But anytime I'm also like somewhere else taking an Uber, and Kevin kind of laughs, or a Lyft, I pull up the directions on my phone as well to like follow step by step. Cause like, if you're looking at it on the app, a lot of times, like on your side, it just shows where you're going. It doesn't. And like the person could be taking like a back road they know. And normally they ask first, but I always pull up the maps on my phone to be like, is he going in the complete opposite direction? Because you don't know when you're somewhere you don't know. So I always pull it up to just make sure they're going in the general right direction.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But anyway, that being said, Courtney, what is your perk of the week?
So my perk of the week is I have been on a book streak. I read a
Mm.
really, really bad book, and the
Ugh.
universe goes, I'm so sorry. Here's 3 amazing ones in a row.
Oh,
But
love it. I'm ready. I'm pretty sure you told me about all of them already, but just in case.
well, I'm just going to talk about one of them, I think.
Okay.
And that is my most recent read, which is Happy Place by Emily Henry. And it
Mhm.
was a masterpiece. It was so
I
good.
can't wait.
Emily Henry fucking does it again.
Yeah, I love her.
This might be bold to say, but it might be my favorite by hers. But I feel like every time I read a
Oh.
book by her, I'm like, this one's my favorite by her.
Yeah, yeah.
But this one, I don't know. It was just so good. And I was
Hmm.
sitting on the couch and like Kevin kept trying to talk to me. And I was like, listen to me. I love you. But is your brother ready to play with you yet? I have 50 pages. Do not talk to me.
Yeah, you're
And
like, this, no, no, you're done.
and then I also always tell him about my books, and he's always just like, uh-huh, uh-huh.
Hmm.
And literally 50 pages, he was like, so tell me about your book. And I'm like, well, I can't say no now because you never ask this. So, but whatever. But then like after I finished it, I was just sitting there and he was like, why are you so sad? Did it have a sad ending? And I was like, no. And he was like, are you just sad it's over? And I was like, yeah.
Yeah, that's the worst when you like
And
reach
then
the end and you're like, oh, oh,
because you're
now it's
reading
done.
so fast to get there, because
Yeah.
I'm like, I need to know what happens. I need
Hmm.
to know the resolution of this book.
Yeah.
And then you get there and you're just like, I can't let these characters go. And I had to try and
Hmm.
explain like a book hangover to Kevin where I was like,
Mm.
I can't start another book. I can't betray the characters like that.
Yeah, you're
And
like,
he's
I
like,
need a
that's
minute.
dramatic. And I'm like, yes, but it's like, I cannot give myself to another book yet. I need to
Mm.
take a breath.
Yeah.
It was just so good. I just really enjoyed it. I really, really
I'm
enjoyed
excited.
it.
I got that for my birthday, so that is next on my list after I finally finished that book I've been reading forever that my aunt lent me that is like 1,500
Did it
pages.
get better?
It did. It did. It was there was a lot that could have been cut out of it that was like
Mm-hmm.
unnecessary, but I mean, it was easier to like keep going. So I'm like, I am interested in the story. Just sometimes I'm like, okay, I
Yeah.
need you to like get to the fucking point here. But it was good. And now I'm reading Kindred that you recommended. So
Mm-hmm. I really enjoyed
um,
that one.
yeah, so I'm excited. And then once I finish that, assuming nothing else from the library becomes available, then that one is next on my list. So
Yeah. It was just so good. And like, it is like a romance, but it just had
mhm.
so much depth. Like,
Yeah.
so
I feel
much,
like
like,
hers do. Like they're more, yeah.
they're more real. It's like, yes,
Hmm.
it's a love story, but like, these characters are going to have real shit happening to them.
Yeah.
That's like, I don't know. She's just such a good writer, and it was just so well done. And
Hmm. Good.
I'm still thinking about it. I still haven't started another book yet, but I finished it Friday, so it's been like 48
Oh,
hours.
oh
So I'm
wow,
like,
that's a long time to not start a new book though.
I know. I mean, I have been busy too, but also
Yeah.
like I just needed to,
Yeah. Marinating those characters for a bit.
yeah.
Yeah.
But that is my perk of the week. Jacqueline, what is your perk of the week?
So my perk of the week is the trip that I did go on that I've mentioned now. So I had to go to DC for work for a couple of days. So it was a really good, like, it was for a conference and it was a good work trip as far as like the information. And, sometimes you go on like a work conference and you're like, well, I already knew everything I learned. This was pointless. But I felt like it was
Mm-hmm.
really good. I was the only person there, like, from my agency slash state, which is a little intimidating, but it also like forces you to have conversations with other people because I know if I
Mm-hmm.
was there like with my coworkers, like I would just like hang out with them, but then I had to be like, okay, well, I'm not going to spend 3 days alone, so let me just go up to a table with people and introduce myself, and so I got to make some connections, and that was nice. And that was also my first like solo trip away, like since having my daughter, so it was very nice to have some like alone time in the hotel to read an entire book, which was The Housemaid, which I really enjoyed,
Mm-hmm.
and watch some TV and just kind of just
I
chill and
wondered how you were
relax.
gonna do with your first solo trip away. I waited until you got on the plane. I was like, I'll believe it when she gets on the plane.
You're like, she's not gonna go. No, I did good. I was very proud of myself, and it was easier too that like she was staying, with her father. It's not like I had to like. It's not like
Mm-hmm.
we were both leaving her for 3 days, and so she was going to be with, her grandparents or whatever. So that made it easier that I
Yeah.
wasn't like worried about how she was, and she was fine. She did great. Like they FaceTimed me every night, and like she would chat, and then she went back to what she was doing, and
Yeah.
it-
That's good for you. Good to get a
yeah,
refresh. It'll make you
it was.
like a better, no, I don't want to say like a better mom, like whatever. But you know
No,
what I
but
mean?
no,
Like
I
just to like
100%.
to
Yeah.
miss her and not be like, fucking touch me again and I'm gonna Pop your little hair pigtails out.
As you can see, guys, this is why Courtney has so many children. She just loves them so much. No,
hey,
100%.
I'm repeating what Jacqueline says to me of if my child touches me one more time, I want to die.
I don't say I'm going to rip her pigtails out, I promise.
I thought that was nicer than anything else. You're just ripping out the little hair. I meant the hair bands where she doesn't have pigtails anymore. I didn't mean like pull her hair out completely. I was trying to make it like kid friendly where I'm like, you're not gonna pop her in the face. So I was like, I'm gonna rip her pigtails out. So now you don't have pigtails anymore. You just got hair.
Nana boo boo.
Stick your head in doo doo.
Oh gosh, she did rip some of her hair out today on our walk. Like she was just like playing with it, and then she's like, "What?"
Just ripping her pigtails out.
I know. I'm like, she did it herself. She was like, well, I feel and she's like, and it was like, just like a few hairs, and then she was like, hair in my hand, and I'm like, yeah, why is your hair in your hand? And then she never did it again. But I guess sometimes the impulse,
the intrusive thoughts,
exactly. Yeah, they won. It was like, oh nope, I don't like that. But you're exactly right. It is good to like have that time to be able to come back like more refreshed and like have the patience and especially like working from home with her. It's not like I get like a daily break from her to like come home at the end of the day. It's like with her all the time. So yeah, it was enjoyable. It was nice to like wake up in the morning and not have to think about what anyone else needed that day. Like I had to like wake up, go for a run, shower, get myself down to like eat breakfast and start classes. And I'm like, oh, that's all I had to do. I didn't have to like get anyone else ready or like, wait for a toddler to do the one thing you tell her to do that takes 600 minutes for some reason, That was very long-winded. But that is my perk of the week was like the work specific stuff too, but also just having, some evenings to myself in the hotel and walked my happy self down to get some food and walked myself back and got to explore an area. And, yeah, it was nice.
Sounds nice.
So if you guys want to tell us about all of the things you guys know, just, whatever, let us know what your thoughts are on this case. Like, what do you guys think happened? If you guys are local to this case, like, do you have more information that you've heard about that, like, we weren't able to access here that you think we should know?
Yes, please, because there was barely any information that I could find.
Yeah.
Barely any.
Please let us know if you guys have more sources that may not be available to us here in the United States. All of our, social media handles and contact information and all that stuff is in the show notes. And of course, we are on patreon.com/caffeinated crimes, where next week, the week after, how many weeks are there?
Next week, the bonus comes out.
Yes. The bonus will come out next week. So last month we did all about me for my birthday, and this month we're doing all about Courtney for her birthday. So if you want to hear Courtney answer 29 questions, I guess she's going to get one less than me. So if you guys want to hear Courtney answer 29 random questions about herself, I promise it's going to be very exciting. So check out what we have to offer over there, all of the other goodies. But our monthly bonus episodes, I feel like, are the meat of what we have over there.
Yeah, pretty good. And if you could please give us 5 stars on Apple or Spotify or wherever you can give high ratings, that would be much appreciated. But in the meantime, go have a cup of coffee.
And don't commit a crime.